Hi everyone, welcome to this Builderment video. I've been trying to speedrun to fastest time for an Earth token on Builderment. When I posted my results on the Discord community page, I was asked if I could do a YouTube video to explain a bit more and then see where there's possibly some time to be gained in this run. So I just put some video together here to kick off the first part. Just look at the timing and the time to first item for that speed run that ended up in 4 hours and 15 minutes. I'll browse quickly through my blueprints, but then I'll just start a clean run to explain how I use those blueprints and how I set up my base to get to this speed run time. So I'm just going to scroll through the times here just to show you how fast things have run, and this video is probably going to run to computers first, and then I'll do a separate one on other stuff. Before we go to the blueprints, I thought this would be a good one to look at, and I posted this also on the Discord. It's just a comparison of my time previous to the 4 hours and 15 minutes, which was the 4 hours and 24 minutes, and the improvements to those times at certain levels of first production of an item. This is definitely not the whole list of every item that can be produced, but the ones that I think are sort of good milestones to look at. You can see there's some gain or loss of a minute or a small periods of time in the early game. The one key one that I'm targeting usually is the computers at in this case 30 minutes, where it previously was 33 minutes. So that's a good pointer there. If you get to this earlier and on, you keep research running, you have a good chance of making it into a better time. However, there is some times later on in the end game where you can recover some time. It's hard to pinpoint, and I don't know where it happens exactly. I have to run more times to figure out where that happens. But you can see here the one major point after computers is sort of kicking in the research for graphite and steel, turning that into battery and concrete production. So those are good times to look at too, in an hour 10 and an hour 17 for batteries and concrete respectively. I've previously reversed those to do concrete first and then batteries, but concrete does take time to load up to have enough concrete production for the end game. But getting to batteries earlier means that you can continue that branch of research, which is sort of the main branch, a bit earlier on. So I've in this run chosen to run batteries first, and I think it's the preferred way. We can always try to rebalance concrete later on if we are lacking in the end game, and then figuring out in the next run how to balance better, prioritize concrete. But I think running batteries first is the better option, at least for me now. Then getting into electromotors, where the rotors need a lot of that same steel rod that concrete uses as well. So that's a tricky one to balance right away, because the research will push into will push the rods into that research center instead of the concrete production. So there is a lag still even on the concrete production if you push all iron rod directly into research. I think I let a few through to just get a marker for concrete down. So typically concrete might even be a little bit later, closer to that 120 or something like that after the research is done. Then we get into a point where we're not pulling as many, or we're not tapping as many resources anymore, because by that time we are largely covered on most resources except for those specific lines that we pull in for those factories that get unlocked later on. Another look here is at the matter duplicator. I made a mistake of not letting through the atomic locators to the matter duplicator production side, so I did lose about 1 to 2 minutes there at that point. I'm trying to keep an eye on things that I do wrong in a run to improve later, because this is definitely not a most efficient run, even just based on my blueprinting. So there's definitely some time to be gained. I don't know how much and how fast you can push through, but there's for sure pockets of time that you're waiting for resources to be belted into the base, or where you just don't have the resources to start the new research that's been unlocked right away. But yeah, let's look at some blueprints and see how I've sort of established my setup here, and then run into a clean playthrough. So I've prepared just under 80 blueprints for my speed run here, and I'll scroll through them quickly before starting a new playthrough. I'm not going to explain too much on these because it will become somewhat self evidence when I place these down on what they do. But the initial ones here, the first few are really they're tagged with SB for starter base, but I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. But it's really just to get things established, get the first pockets of research unlocked, going into first wire setup, and then we get into the bigger one, where it's the first real dual input factory with the magnets. I guess getting feed for that, unlocking the stone, silicone, all that kind of stuff. Getting into a metal frame production and then circuit production, setting that up, unlocking computers, getting into heat sinks for those computers, then setting up the computer, bringing in more heat sinks, getting additional wire in to solidify the production of those computers to get to further research. And then once those computers are producing, we're starting at building a bit more wire in so that we can expand our magnet production, because that's going to be necessary later on for the batteries. We also pick up here in Blueprint 25 the gears for our research, and that will just keep running for the whole playthrough, just to slowly unlock belt speed. We add some more circuits. I think at the same time I'm adding a metal frame production facilities there, because those need to go up to circuits at 8 and metal frames to 6. We get a third computer, like I said, more wire setup for additional magnets, even more wire, even more magnets. So we end up with total 15 factories for magnet, I think, in the end. That kind of works for me. It's not fully calculated through, but it works for my purposes for now, at least. I do some calculations. I do some just in feeling and experience, I guess. Then we get into the big unlock, or the big save up for graphite here, for first graphite for battery. So it's just under 10,000 gold. I've put the excavators and logistics separate from the building, so that can come down, they can start belting stuff to the location, and then placing the buildings, and then the belting back to the base. And then we get the sand unlock to get the full unlock for concrete. Placing steel in, another big save up there at 13.7k. Again, logistics and excavators separate from the buildings, and then the belting to the base. Then we'll belt the steel rod eventually back to the base with the sand. We created kind of a base structure to make sure that I place the buildings properly, because all these blueprints require me to place buildings in the right spot, and if it's off by one, it can just wreak havoc on your whole base and play through, and you probably want to restart if that happens. So I just created this guide. It's a 210 gold investment to just understand, or to ensure that I don't muck up the placements. We add some more ingots for magnets. For magnet production. Then we unlock the batteries and the concrete, or reset the production facilities up. We get some more gear ready for our electromotors and start belting that to the base. Then we grab some additional plates on the east side and northeast of the map to help with the metal frames, because that's eventually going to go to a 9 factory production from the 6 that we have up until that point. We then get to number 50 there to set up the belts for rotor and motor production, and then the production facilities themselves. We have a little bit of a big save up again there at 12.8 to get the graphite ready for nano wire production. Pull in the last belt of wire for the magnets here, and adding another five magnets to our production line there. We grab the graphite belt to the base, and then we get our second steel setup here. which is going to be another 15k to save up for. And that should shore up, or that's essentially the last of the steel that we're going to add, and it's the second one. That should give us enough steel rods for our concrete and rotor production. We built that to the base. We pick up the little woods, little wood patch to the west of our base there, just to make sure that we can support an additional 3 metal frames to bring it up to the 9 that I mentioned before. At this point, I made a small change to. This is my latest change, I guess, where I'm belting the wolframite ore to the base and then placing the furnaces right next to the base. This helps with getting the research unlocked. But if we unlock the research first and then set up the wolframite ore excavators with the furnaces and then belt it to the base from there, we need fewer belts to get the tungsten ore to the base. But by the time it gets to the base for the nanowire, I guess for the tungsten carbide, we lose some time. So I'm trying this where I'm belting the wolf ore to the base and converting it there. I have another setup a little bit later where I'm belting the tungsten ore directly, just as a supplemental supply there. We then place a class for the nanowires in number 59 there. Get the nanowire set up because the stuff that we need for this should be there at the time, and we probably finished the research up to that point. We grab the wolf for the research, which is the wolframite to the east and southeast. Those are nice pockets that I just place the excavators and then set them up for the research facilities to pop those on for, I think it's 1,000 off the top of my head, to get it unlocked. We pick up the next graphite production section for tungsten. We stack some coal, and this is an interesting one because I started adding the coal plants to the layout, which gives me a 20% increase in production. I'm not going all the way to nuclear to get that boost, and I also don't like upgrading the 2 input or more buildings because it takes a lot of money and a lot of resources to get that research done. So I'm using the coal and those coal plants, but up until this point, I can't really justify 2,000 gold for a coal plant. So I'm just pulling in some coal that I can use those later on. I don't activate them right away, and they're not planned in specific at a certain time, but I'm just picking them up when I need them. We're belting the tungsten ore, carbide facility set up there at 65. We then add some more heat sinks. I'm not sure if these are necessary. I think they are for the supercomputers. I think we won't be able to run without them. I've always added them. There might be an option where I'm trying this out without them later on, but I'll have to see if that's going to work or not. I'll do it in another run through. We pick up the northeast wire, and it's the wire for later on for the atomic locator. So that's basically the last resource we're tapping there in 67. I grab the logistic belts for turbocharger, get into couplers and turbochargers, and from there on, it's really just sticking on buildings and some supplemental belts for research, not for research, to get the research done for the end game, essentially. We have the supercomputers, the microscopes, the atom locators. Then we get into the gyro and the stabilizers, iframe, industrial frames, and the E-cube. The pyramids, as I call them, and the eggs, which is, I don't even know what they're called in real life. I think they're pyramids, but I don't know. We'll get to them in the playthrough, but I'm using some shorter names here that are easier to type in a blueprint. So I call them eggs and pyramids, and then the tank and the hot dog. And the hot dog is another name that I'm using. I think it's a matter multiplier or something like that, or collector. The tank, hot dog, and glue facilities, and then those are 2 old ones. An old tungsten one, like I said, I'm just trying out the wolframite belting to the base directly, so that's an old one I'm keeping there, and a coal inline setup.